Look, I know exactly what you're thinking. You've spent dozens, maybe hundreds of hours mastering V Rising. You built your perfect castle, farmed resources like a pro, and basically became an all-powerful vampire. Then you see Vampire's Bloodlord Rising and think, it's just another vampire game, it'll be a breeze. Wrong. Very wrong. So let me save you from all that frustration. Let's talk about the 10 habits you need to drop before starting your journey in Bloodlord Rising. Because believe me, the faster you forget what you learned in V Rising, the faster you'll start dominating this new vampiric world. I'm Mary, and the video is about to start. If you're coming from V Rising, I already know which addiction is the hardest to quit. That delightful safety of seeing everything from above, as if you were playing chess with vampires. In isometric view, you make decisions calmly because the map is right there, open, almost honest with you. In Vampire's Bloodlord Rising, that honesty vanishes the moment the camera drops over your shoulder and the game becomes a different conversation. Now you don't read the entire arena, you survive what you can see. The problem is that your brain keeps trying to play the old way. You enter a chaotic combat and instinctively look for that mental zoom out. You try to predict flanks, measure everyone's distance, and control the space as if you had a drone view. However, in third person, this becomes a trap because the threat that kills you almost always comes from the side you aren't looking at. And when you lose that global reading, you also lose your timing. Instead of reacting to what appears on your screen, you react to what you think is happening around you. The key is to accept that navigation here isn't map first, action second, it's camera first, decision second. You need to train your fingers and your head to rotate the camera constantly, like a continuous scan, and use dashes not just to escape, but to reposition and regain visual information. There are times when the best defense isn't blocking or hitting, it's simply spinning, identifying the source of danger and aligning your body with what matters in that exact second. When that clicks, the feeling changes completely. You stop trying to control the fight from above and start dancing inside it. The habit you need to unlearn is, I see, therefore I command. Here, it's, I rotate, therefore I understand. Once you embrace this limited vision and learn to build situational awareness the hard way, the third-person view stops being a nuisance and becomes part of your vampire's power, more visceral, more tense, and much more satisfying when you master it. It took me a while to accept this, but if you're coming from V Rising, the first thing that needs to die is that anxiety to play pretty in combat. You know, when you enter a fight already thinking about angles, safe distances, hitting skill shots down to the pixel, and making the enemy dance to your rhythm? In Bloodlord Rising, this instinct hinders you more than it helps because the game isn't asking for MOBA precision, it's asking for aggression and a simple reading of what's right in front of you. The difference is stark. Instead of that tactical combat where you needed to land AoE abilities and manage cooldowns like you're playing League of Legends, here it's all about rhythm and reaction. You hammer the left mouse button nonstop, keep an eye out for those yellow enemy attacks, which is your cue to right-click and counter, use the shift dash for momentary invincibility and to reposition behind the guy, and hold the click when you see a shield to release a charged attack that breaks their defense. There are no 15 key combos. It's smart spamming with the right timing. What saves the system from being generic button mashing are the brutal finishers. When you break their posture or guard and the enemy opens up, there's the reward. An execution that is satisfying, fast, and makes you feel like you're hunting, not dueling. At this point, you realize the game doesn't want you to be a skill rotation engineer. It wants you to be an opportunistic predator waiting for the right opening to finish them off. So, listen up. Resist the temptation to circle the enemy looking for a perfect window that doesn't exist the way you learned. Stick to them, apply pressure, read the visual cues, abuse the invincible dash to phase through attacks and appear behind them, and treat executions as the real goal of combat. V Rising trained you to be cerebral and precise. Bloodlord Rising wants you to be direct, cruel, and efficient. If you come from V Rising, I perfectly understand the impulse. Opening the grid and building a super functional castle brick by brick, almost as if you were setting up a factory. But in Vampires, Bloodlord Rising, this habit becomes an anchor because the game gives you a smarter way to think about architecture. First, you imagine the castle, then you execute it. When you try to do everything manually, you not only waste time, but also lose that gothic, planned fortress vibe the game wants to immerse you in. The trick is to treat the ghost blueprint as your drawing board. I started sketching the entire castle before placing the first real wall. It's a different mindset. You already foresee halls with dramatic curves, rooms with hidden passages, a tower just for the view, a central hall that gives that sense of dominance, and mainly, you stop thinking only about does it work and start thinking about does it impose a presence. Planning this way also avoids rework because you won't be tearing down half the house after realizing the layout flow is bad. Best of all, you don't have to be the bricklayer of your own kingdom. Letting the thralls build by themselves using the global stash completely changes the game's pace because you become the lord of the castle, not the construction worker. While they work, you are hunting, managing resources, exploring, or just adjusting layout details that actually matter. When I embraced this, the game stopped feeling like just another grid survival and started feeling like a true vampiric power fantasy. Now, if there are two priorities I would put at the top for those unlearning old habits, it's roofs and blood vessels for the core. A roof isn't just finishing touches, it's survival, because blocking the sun gives you freedom of movement and saves you from running like a maniac for shade. And the blood vessels feeding the core become that basic safety net that lets you play with design without feeling the noose around your neck, always fearing the castle will stop breathing. It took me a while to accept this because in V Rising, I treated servants as infrastructure. You put them there, send them on a mission, and move on with your life. In Vampires Bloodlord Rising, this autopilot will sabotage you quickly. A thrall here isn't just a spreadsheet mob. They're almost an employee with moods, expectations, and routines. And if you try to play with that same set and forget style, you'll feel the production stalling and your base coming to a halt. The turning point for me was understanding that recruitment isn't just about grabbing anyone. You need to use Florica and Gossip as a quality radar. When she drops a tip like hunt bears, I learned to read that as a profile clue. A good hunter, someone who performs better at what you actually need. It seems like a role play detail, but in practice, it totally changes how much that thrall delivers later. Then comes the part that hits V Rising veterans the hardest. The absolute basic requirement is giving a personal coffin to each one. Without it, loyalty doesn't rise the way it should, and the thrall becomes that half-present ally who doesn't sustain work for long. I started seeing coffins as a production investment, not a decorative luxury, because high loyalty is what keeps the machine turning while you're busy doing something else. And finally, there's role assignment, enchanter, builder, and so on. If you don't define roles, the game won't manage itself for you, and that's where the feeling that thralls are lazy or bugged comes from. When I started recruiting with intention, giving individual coffins and putting each one in the right role, the castle finally stopped depending on me micromanaging everything all the time. And better yet, they actually keep working instead of just dropping everything. I had to swallow my big vampire pride because I came from V Rising with that 24/7 predator mentality. I enter a human area and immediately think about attacking first and asking questions later. In Vampire's Bloodlord Rising, this habit only generates unnecessary chaos. Villages are not a free buffet. They are a social board, and if you play as if your cape is always open, you turn simple tasks into chases, wasted time, and a mess that closes doors for you. What flipped the switch for me was embracing the aristocrat form. It seems silly at first, but it's literally the difference between walking through the front door and becoming the alleyway monster in 5 seconds. Instead of arriving and causing panic, you move around, pick up quests without raising suspicion, collect taxes like you're just doing rounds, and even create space to recruit calmly by observing who is worth your time. And then comes the sweet part, the quick switch. I started treating this as my natural game rhythm. Aristocrat to exist in the human world, vampire to solve things when violence and efficiency are needed. You aren't abandoning your predator side, you're just choosing the right time to show your teeth, and that makes every encounter more controlled and much more profitable. The biggest unlearning here is the direct attack in human areas. When I stopped responding to everything with an onslaught and started using the village as a resource, I gained more than I lost. More access, more opportunities, and less wear and tear. It's almost like learning to hunt with etiquette, and ironically, that gives you more blood in the long run than breaking everything on impulse. I entered Bloodlord Rising with my head completely conditioned by V Rising. Okay, who's the next boss and what power am I going to unlock? This left me lost for a while, because here, the game doesn't reward that sequential hunting impulse the same way. When you try to force progression based on bosses and gear grinding, you get the feeling that a piece is always missing, when in reality, you are ignoring what actually pushes your power forward. The click for me was accepting that progression here is a continuous line of evolution, much more tied to skill trees and levels gained through tasks than to boss trophies. The game wants you to do real vampire work. Organize routines, fulfill objectives, optimize your base, and climb steadily without depending on that power spike a boss gives you in V Rising. Another thing I had to relearn was the relationship with the castle core. Instead of thinking, I'm going to farm gear to enter the next area, I started thinking, I'm going to feed the core with blood to open the map. This shifts your focus. You stop chasing combat as if it were the only door, and start treating blood and castle management as the fuel that unlocks new biomes and opportunities. It clicked for me the moment I accepted that there are basically two sets, aristocrat and hunter. It's not a game about switching armor every half hour, it's a game about choosing form, function, and flow. When I swapped I'm going to grind gear for I'm going to automate, keep rituals running, and let the castle work for me, progression became faster and, most importantly, more stable. I entered Vampire's Bloodlord Rising with that automatic paranoia V Rising puts in your head. Who's following me? Are they going to raid my base? Better not mess around with rare resources. It's funny how that becomes an addiction because you play tense even when you don't need to. Here, this mentality only holds you back because you start treating allies as potential threats and turn every clan decision into a mini-game of distrust. The difference is that this game is pure co-op with up to 4 players, and it doesn't have that planned PvP script guiding the design. So instead of thinking about secret routes, hiding loot, and sleeping with one eye open, I had to train myself to think in terms of team roles. Who is doing what? Who is advancing which task? Who is securing blood? And who is running the base so everything flows? When I finally unlearned the raid paranoia, I realized the pleasure of the game lies in clan synergy, not invasion. It's more about dividing responsibilities without stepping on each other's toes. One player focusing on automation and servants, another on rituals, another on exploration and quests, and so on. You stop playing like a lone wolf setting an ambush and start playing like a group building an efficient machine. And I'll be honest, dropping that social tension makes the game feel much lighter and even more immersive. In V Rising, part of the fun is the rivalry. Here, the fun is well-oiled cooperation. When you trade defending the castle from people for making the castle work with people, progress accelerates and the experience becomes much more fun. It took me way too long to drop the habit of doing everything by hand, because V Rising conditions you to be the gatherer-in-chief. You go out, chaw trees, hit rocks, come back, process, repeat. When I arrived in Vampire's Bloodlord Rising, I continued this mental routine of, I'll get everything myself, and the result was pure exhaustion. I spent more time farming than actually playing, and worse, the game was giving me tools so I wouldn't have to do that, but I simply ignored them because I was stuck on autopilot. The turning point was when I finally understood that automation here isn't a luxury, it's the main path of progression. Setting up loops like wood to furnace to charcoal for tiles and glass stopped being something to do later and became a priority. When you structure these flows, you stop depending on your free time and start letting the castle work while you do literally anything else more interesting. And the thralls are the key to all of this. Passive collection stations with thralls gathering wax, honey, and other resources completely transformed the game. I used to think thralls were just for combat or specific missions, but when you put them to do the actual dirty work, you get hours of your time back. It's like having a team running production while you explore, complete quests, or simply enjoy the game without that weight of, I need to farm before I do anything. The biggest unlearning here is understanding that solo grinding is a waste of potential. When I stopped priding myself on doing everything alone and started treating automation as a legitimate goal, the game became smoother, faster, and much less draining. You stop being an RPG laborer and truly become a vampire commanding an empire that runs on its own. I came from V Rising carrying the trauma that dying is always a massive setback. You lose time, you lose position, you have to trek all the way back. So in Vampire's Bloodlord Rising, I treated mausoleums as random points on the map, something to pass by and ignore. The result? I avoided risky combat and deep exploration because I was terrified of dying and having to do the whole path over again, even with them right there. What changed everything for me was seeing mausoleums for what they truly are, local respawns designed for you to quick retry combat and exploration. It's as if the game is saying, go ahead, die without fear. I'll put you back on your feet right here. When I started planning routes thinking of them as intentional checkpoints, I stopped playing defensively and started truly testing limits. Now I use this all the time. I enter a new area, locate the nearest mausoleum, and then I let the beast loose in combat or exploration. Dying became part of the learning process, not a punishment. For instance, you try an aggressive approach, fail, respawn 30 seconds away, and adjust on the spot, without that eternal walk back. Unlearning the mausoleum is just a random spot freed me to enjoy the game in a more aggressive and efficient way. In V Rising, death punishes you. Here, it pushes you forward when you play near them. It's incredibly liberating and makes you feel more in control of the risk rather than a hostage to it. I entered Bloodlord Rising treating blood literally as a temporary power-up, just like in V Rising, where you grab a blood type to get stronger for a while and then simply forget about it. You can imagine how counterproductive that was. I always kept my blood meter low, thinking it was just an extra, and when my real HP started dropping, I didn't even understand why. Then I realized that blood here is a foundation, not a luxury. Keeping blood above 80% is what makes the regeneration of existence, your real HP, work properly. So reducing it is basically playing without a health buffer. When I started treating blood as an essential part of survival, going after it, planning hunts, recycling, stockpiling, the difference was brutal. I stopped dying mid-combat for lack of gasoline and started feeling much more stable. Furthermore, blood feeds the core and goes directly into rituals, so you aren't just drinking blood for a 5-minute buff, you're feeding the Empire. Instead of thinking, drink blood for a 5-minute buff, I started thinking, blood is what keeps the castle alive and gives me real advantages over time. This completely changes your rhythm. You plan exploration, routes, recruitment, and even sleep based on how much blood will be coming in. And finally, the big mental reset came with the sun. Without enough blood, you turn to dust real fast, and the sun doesn't warn you twice. The coffin is like a skip today or night button, but without blood in your veins, not even the coffin will save you. When I understood that every drop of blood I saved was a layer of security against the sun, I stopped wasting it and started treating blood as the most important resource in the game, not just a casual upgrade.